So let's just jump into it. So I'm going to share something that I haven't ever publicly talked about, and I'm sharing it because I think that it may resonate with more people than just me. It could be me, but so growing up, I was always told, like, you're not Black enough. And I know it sounds like a weird thing to say, may sound strange to someone who's watching, but if you know, you know. This is a very real thing within the Black community. You know, like growing up, you hear the phrases of like, you talk white, or you're not from the hood, like you're not really Black, or you haven't had this experience, so you're not really Black, or you don't like these things, so you're not really Black. You have that skin tone, or you have that hair color, so you're not really Black. Side note, if you've seen my natural hair, you know what I'm talking about. And so some way, somehow, it didn't matter what I did. It didn't matter how I wanted to look the part. I just still could not fit within this box that other people decided like I should fit in. And instead of being okay with that, I tried to fix it. And I'm talking about from a very young age. Like, I'm not saying like, oh, I'm in my 20s and I'm in college and people are like, oh, you're not Black enough. Like, no, I'm talking about from 6, 7, 8, 9 years old in school, basically being told like, you're a liar. You're not Black. Like, there's no way that your parents are Black. Like, there's just, so imagine what that does to your subconscious. Imagine like mentally what that does to a child. I'm not going to get into the psychology of it, but that's the backstory. And so in order to prove myself, like I think any normal human being would do, you try to overemphasize parts of yourself so that way you can finally belong, right? So for so many years, I pretended to like things that I just didn't actually like. I downplayed things that I actually loved. I remember in high school, I think it was like early high school, I would try to like overplay my interest in like hip hop and, you know, certain movies, certain TV shows. Now, mind you, I've not seen half of the movies that I'm quote unquote supposed to have seen. So let's just put that out there. But I remember overemphasizing certain parts that I thought would get me accepted. But then I would hide other parts of myself. Like, I would hide my interest in anime. I would hide that like I'm naturally a bookworm. Like, I love to read. I love to read mystery novels. I would hide that like, dude, Zumba is my favorite form of exercise. Like, salsa music is my absolute top genre of music. But you can't say these things out loud because I'm not going to say you won't be accepted in the community, but for me, my lived experience was this makes you less Black, and I already have a lesser Black card, if you will. So it just felt easier to downplay it. It just felt easier to hide it. And I would literally continue to shrink parts of myself that I thought would make other people more comfortable with who they thought I should be. Like, let that sink for a moment. I stopped being who I was in order to make other people comfortable with who they thought I should be. Yeah. And I would love to say that that was just in my personal life, but I did it everywhere. I did it at work. I did it at church. I did it in friend groups and social groups. Like, when I would meet people for the first time, I would so downplay things about myself. I would downplay my background. I would downplay the opportunities that I had growing up. I just never wanted anyone to feel inferior. I never wanted anyone to seem or think that I thought I was better than them. I never wanted anyone to feel the way that I felt in not being included. So I just constantly made myself smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller for years. But here's the thing that nobody tells you about doing that. If you do that for so long, if you constantly make yourself small, you start to believe that the smaller version of you is the real one. You forget what you actually like, what you actually think, who you actually are. And that realization for me, like when that finally hit, when the bubble burst, it was the most uncomfortable thing that I've ever sat with. Because you look back and you're just like, I spent way too much time focusing on people who are never going to accept you in the first place. Because I'm just going to throw this little nugget in there. People are normally projecting on you. So if you ever come across someone who doesn't like you or doesn't like what you're doing or like has some type of issue with you, it's normally a projection of their own insecurities in their life. So it has nothing to do with you. Now, could I go back and tell my 6-year-old self this? I wish, but I digress. So in total, like, it wasn't one big moment that finally changed things for me. It was a bunch of small moments that added up. First was the pandemic. COVID was a big one because when the world slowed down and I had nowhere to go, clearly you don't have anyone to perform for. So you start noticing things, right? Like, if you spend enough time by yourself, quietly, your mind, things will start to bubble up. And that's when I started noticing and like questioning, like, do I actually like this? Is this how I'm supposed to act? What have I been doing all this for? Like, was it just because of expectations of other people? Yes. The common denominator to all my answers was yes, it was only because you were looking for approval from these people. Then a second one for me was getting married. So I also got married during the pandemic, and I married someone who was from a completely different culture. And so that alone, like that relationship started showing me how so much of what I was doing was just how things were in this one area or with this one group of people. It wasn't the only way of doing things, right? So it's not like this way is right and this way is wrong, but like, no, there's just multiple ways to do something. Simple as that. So I started to realize that just because you don't fit a certain stereotype doesn't make you any less of a member of a community. That you can still love your culture deeply, you can still love your community deeply, and still be a fully complex individual person who also likes anime and mystery novels and will dance salsa in her kitchen, and doesn't make you any less of a person of a community. And you don't have to justify it to anyone. If you don't leave this video with anything else, know that you do not have to justify who you are to anyone. So that version of me that I had just been shrinking for years and years, like that one who had all of the quirks and all of the interests, right? Like that just didn't fit what people expected. That version of me was never the problem. Their expectation and me wanting to live up to that expectation, that was the problem. And so just know, like, you don't have to keep contorting yourself to meet their expectation, to meet the stereotype, to meet anything, because at the end of the day, one thing I will share that I've learned is you will never, ever meet their expectation. It is a constantly moving target that you will be chasing for the rest of your life if you continue to let it. So what does it look like to actually stop faking it? I think for me right now in this season, it looks like this. Just because someone doesn't understand you does not mean you owe them an explanation. Just because someone is uncomfortable with who you are doesn't mean that you have to adjust yourself to them. Just because someone has decided what I'm supposed to look like based on how I look doesn't mean I have to perform that version. Like, doesn't mean I have to meet any of that. My personality, my likes, my habits, my hobbies, all of these things are no longer up for discussion. That's it. They are no longer up for ridicule. And they don't require anyone else's approval to be valid. That's what I wish I could go back 10, 15 years ago, 20 years ago, and tell my younger self. And I know that it sounds simple when you say it out loud, but it does take intentional hard work. It took me years to get to this point. It took me being in spaces that I didn't fit. It took me going through changes in my life, whether that's, personal, health, like career, all of that. It took a relationship and a marriage to show me different ways of seeing things. And it literally took, at least in this last year, turning 30 and watching everything in my life shift to realize that I do not have the time to keep performing a version of myself for other people. I just don't. I don't have the energy. And so here's what I want to leave you with. Faking it doesn't look like lying. Sometimes it may look like laughing at the joke that's not funny, agreeing with an opinion that you actually don't hold, pretending to like something that doesn't actually interest you. Those are all parts of faking it. And it makes sense that we do it because we as human beings, we're wired to belong, right? Like we're wired to want to be accepted. But at some point, belonging to a version of you that actually isn't truth, that actually isn't authentic, isn't actually belonging, it's just a really messed up, longer, quieter way of being alone. Let that sit in. After listening to this, realize that you've been faking it in some areas of your life, whether that's you're someone who has weird interests, or you're someone that, hey, your personality kind of goes against the grain, or you don't fit the box that other people expect you to be in. Just know that you were not the problem and you never were. So if this is helpful, I hope it was. Drop in the comments if there's parts of you that you've noticed, like, hey, you've been downplaying. Like, I would love to know that I'm not the only one. I don't think I am, but I just want to make sure. And if you haven't already, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.